Hello, friends. I'm very excited to have my friend and colleague, Wendy Adamson, with us to talk about healing through writing. And Darcy's going to read her bio to get us started. Darcy?
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to be introducing Wendy Adamson, a mental health advocate who's currently representing Bodhi Casa Recovery Services, which is long-term structured housing for men. As a former addict in long-term recovery, Wendy brings lived experience and hard-earned insight to her work with individuals navigating addiction and healing. Wendy has written three books: Mother Lode, Incorrigible, and Dream Out Loud. Her personal essays have appeared in the Huffington Post, and she has performed stories at The Moth, Unheard LA, and Spark Off Rose. Wendy also shares her story in juvenile halls, jails, and recovery programs, using it as a catalyst to inspire change. She also plays a leadership role in Have a Soul, the nonprofit founded by her son Ricky, helping scale the organization's reach to deliver thousands of shoes to unhoused and at-risk youth. Through strategic growth efforts, she helped secure national media coverage, including NBC, Fox, KCET, and the NBA network. Through all of her work, Wendy remains committed to transforming lived experience into meaningful impact, bridging storytelling, service, and advocacy to create lasting change. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for being here, Wendy. Back to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Darcy. Thanks again, Wendy, for coming on today. Um, God, where do we start? Your background is so full. But I think we'll focus it on the writing piece. And I'd love to hear from you how you got started with writing, like what inspired you?
Well, first, Michelle, thank you for inviting me and Darcy for introducing me. Thank you both um, for having me today. What got me started, I would say, is that kind of it was like knocking on my soul that I needed to write this book. And really wasn't a writer at the time, not at all. I was not a writer. And it, you know, I did a meditation intensive on a weekend, and I had this kind of download, if you will, of you're supposed to write this book. And it was kind of like I knew the book. I had told my stories in those places, in jails and juvenile halls and stuff. So I knew that I knew the story, the arc of it. But in the kind of download I got in meditation, I knew I had to find a way to get it on paper. And so I started like researching places I could take writing classes from Santa Monica City College, and inevitably ended up in Karen's class, Karen Gutman, uh, writing to heal classes. And so there that's where I started like dipping my toe in there. But there was a lot of shame initially about telling my story. So I had to work through that.
Mhm. Um, okay. So then how did all of a sudden, like, what was the process of you writing your book, your first book?
So the process was like like started showing up for those workshops with Karen.
Mhm.
And what the feedback I would get often was I was writing around, motherhood, and my first book is called Mother Load. So I was afraid to share. I was afraid of being judged, you know, and I think shame has a way of keeping you small and, keeping your mouth shut because I grew up in a very toxic family with a lot of mental health secrets and schizophrenia, and we couldn't talk about it. So I became very ashamed of, you know, the circumstances, my mother's mental illness and ultimate suicide. But by showing up to this writing workshop with mostly women, I think there was a man at one point, but he inevitably left. But other women like-minded who are trying to find their story because I was trying to find my story, and the feedback would always be questions about, my relationship with my kids. And Karin would often ask me that. And inevitably, as I learned the craft, because there's that, you have to learn the craft, you have to learn the structure, and keep the emotional thread in the writing, because you know, people don't want to hear like victimese, in a story. So I had to like tell the story, and then my writing is usually scene driven and, without being a victim, and so ultimately, prompted by other writers, I started to write about things that really mattered. And I think that is when a book resonates to me or an article resonates to me, it's the person's ability to be vulnerable and to see their emotional growth, and to hear it on the page.
Hmm. I'm just like I'm one of your like admirers. I have been through Karin, one of yeah, well, many of Karin Gutman's memoir writing classes, and it takes a lot to it takes a lot of a lot, to get through the writing and to put emotion onto the page. And the fact that you've written how many books now?
Three books.
Yeah, it's really admirable that you were, courageous and brave to do that.
Thank you. The first time I did it, and many times after I was petrified, I felt like, um, that silence that I experienced. My dad wanted us to keep my mother's mental illness silent, and not talk about it. So exposing myself was almost like breaking a family contract. It was like I was breaking the secrecy. And, it was like part of me never wanted to go back to that writing group, you
Mhm.
know, and that what kept bringing me back is the women, encouraging me. I loved what you wrote. And, it was like, and they were surprised because, they were surprised that my story was so crazy, that, I was presenting, you know, just like this, it's like, that's why, you know, uh, we get a chance to change our stories, change the narrative by making it art, you know, by turning it into art. And I believe strongly that story is what connects us all.
Mhm.
It's like that is what resonates for me. That's what has changed me, which has inspired me. I I fell in love with storytelling,
Mhm.
and because I experienced the value, I experienced the impact others had in me by reading their writing.
Yeah, I'm just I mean, obviously, we're going to give a shout out to Karin for, facilitating these beautiful classes that inspire so many like yourself. And I think the accountability and the support and the cheerleading is so beautiful. And the feedback, like it's constructive feedback in regard, and the curiosity, I think, is also really um, supportive. And I know that, you've now now that you've written some books, you're now facilitating these writing groups in treatment centers. Is that correct? And
Yes, I do about 5 different treatment centers in the Los Angeles area. and I do privates. Um, I've been a KDAC, a drug and alcohol counselor for, I'd say, about 28 years. And, you know, I was compelled to work with people suffering from addiction and mental health because I wanted to help other people because I had suffered, and I had gotten a second chance. And I was like deeply inspired to use my experience as a tool to help others. And then I got burned out, really. But when I found writing, which was so new and so, it's like something about the writing groups that they're really doing the work. It's like in relapse prevention, I would often feel like I was pulling teeth. I'm pulling teeth. Nobody wants to share what triggers. Oh, activated what? I don't want to talk about that. And so it was like I felt like I was doing more work than they were. But in the writing, it's like they will often come in there and going, uh, I'm not a writer, you know, and I set a safe, kind of give guidelines like that. This is unlike an English class. No red pen is coming out, no grading. If I give you a prompt and you decide to write about the weather, that's fine. You can write in any way you want. You can write a poem, you can write a song, you can write a story, you can bullet point, you can even put down your shopping list, what you need from the market. Just put pen to paper, make an attempt. And what I love is their surprise. Their surprise when they write something, and really so many, uh, different phases in different types of writers, but it's like I get blown away. And when they share, if they decide to share, they don't have to share, but I create guidelines like Karin often did, that we don't ask questions about their writing. We only give positive feedback, and positive feedback can look like, what did you identify with? Did any imagery stand out? So and then if they go off, if they start, asking questions, I just redirect. And so the place becomes safe in the groups, it becomes safe. And over time, they start building that same rapport as I built and you built in Karen's workshops, and it's like it becomes a safe place, but it's up to the facilitator to hold the boundaries or hold the line with the
And
people.
well, and it's you facilitating a group with the KDAC background is going to be so powerful, in terms of being able to help with the emotional regulation piece, because it's an emotional journey. And I think it's, and that's what we're talking about, is the healing that happens. And it's very different than therapy. When you put pen to paper and start writing about a situation and dropping in and needing to be like fully present to flash back so you can get the details so that people can really understand. That is very different than how you speak in therapy sessions. That's how I feel.
I
um,
feel the same way.
right? And you just get even more deeper into the healing work and for it to pass through. So I'm so grateful you're facilitating an experience like this, because it breaks open. It's definitely, personally, it's helped me. I've watched it over and over again in these classes, how powerful this tool can be for people.
Well, I'm really enthusiastic about it. And, I bring that enthusiasm to the group. For me, the burnout of doing a relapse prevention, I wasn't bringing the enthusiasm there. It's needed, but I'm just not the one to do it anymore. But if you talk about writing, I get excited, and it's just like it's so healing, it's so therapeutic. It's the way I process. It's the way I process. And it gives meaning to things that like make no freaking sense, in the world that we're living in, or the world, personal world that you're experiencing. Sometimes things just don't make sense. And, just, recently, as you know, Michelle, I lost my son in December, and he had struggled with health issues. He had COPD and asthma. So he had been in the hospital a couple of times with, uh, you know, near episodes. So I knew he was dealing with health issues, but nothing quite prepares you like when he actually passes. And the day that he passed, I went to his work site where it happened. All of his grandkids, me, my other son, were standing around his wife, holding his hand. It was a very traumatic scene, and it's like I wrote through my grief. I wrote and it was like writing meaning into, and I still am writing. I'm still like writing morning pages, in my morning that I am writing about, the loss of a son because as a parent, uh, you think it's not supposed to happen. You think, oh, we're supposed to go first. But so the pen to paper, or, I write on the computer as well, and gives me a place to land. It gives me a way to metabolize what's going on. I used to and can still do it, let my emotions like take me over. But when I have a personal place to go on the page, it's like I am like talking to something. For me, it's divine in nature. It's like uh, I think the veil is very thin. I think you know this about me, Michelle, that the veil is very thin. I talked to my son yesterday morning. His pictures on the fridge. I still have a relationship with him, but I also have this grief that is just there. And I don't know that this kind of grief ever goes away. It's something you live with. Gives me more comfort to be able to communicate with him. Like yesterday, like I was telling you, going to the Dodgers game. I'm not a sports fan. I don't like to go to sports. I was in a marriage that every weekend was all about sports, and I wanted to be out there hiking or at the beach or something, doing something different. But we sat around a television with three guys, and going to this event, I just go, this is an opportunity to be with my family. This is an opportunity, and take the opportunity, you know see the wonder in it, see the wonder in just showing up for your family and sitting in a row, eating Dodger dogs, or I didn't eat a Dodger dog myself, but but it's like the preciousness of life. I mean, death reminds us of the preciousness, and to appreciate the ones that are here, the ones that you still have in your life. Um, so there's that, but the writing about him and, you know, things we went through, or the way I look back. So, it's like when you're writing memoir about someone that's passed, you're actually get an opportunity to resurrect that person. You bring them back to life.
And has that been feeling healing for you? Like
It
it,
Yeah, it does feel healing. I also started a Substack, so I post, on Substack, but it does feel healing. You know, um, I did it there. I made an appointment with a therapist, and I told her about, all of the experiences in the sun. At first I was, that regret came that I didn't go to Thanksgiving last year, or just different things that I missed in his life when he was younger. Not since I've been sober, and that was in 90, I got sober in 93. Um, but I got more from the writing that I did from telling her and talking about it. And I think that both are valuable, but at this point in my life, I find, um, I find the writing really helpful.
And I think I mean, there's a ripple that happens, right? So you're putting this on the page and then you're communicating it to the world, so
Yeah.
other people that are going through this can feel validated, or, you just don't know, right? Because there is so much shame that people are still having with grief or, beating themselves up for things that they didn't do. And you're putting words to it, things that people don't normally talk about.
It helps people feel seen, and they identify, you know, the thing about shame or keeping secrets is begin to, I thought nobody else had lived in a toxic environment. Everybody looked so shiny on the outside.
Mhm.
We were going to private school, living in a beautiful neighborhood, and everybody looked so shiny and happy. And then what's wrong with me? You know, and I'm not talking about the dysfunction in the home, but so I do truly believe that shame just boxes you in and keeps you small, takes away your voice. And so part of my journey is about finding my voice. And when Motherload first came out, I had done all those workshops, I had done all that writing and had gotten plenty of feedback. But once again, a shame started erupting in me that was like, had no idea that kind of shame still lived in me. And so I was going, what am I doing? Why am I putting this out there? I'm going to be, because I work in mental health field. No, a lot of those people didn't know my story. So now they're going to all know. Now I have no control over the narrative. I might go to a marketing event and be sitting next to somebody and they go, "Hey, I read your book." Now they know everything about me and I only know superficial. So the thing when I worked through the shame that was coming up and I put the book out there, was published, and I started getting good feedback and people, I don't think it was in relation to the feedback, but I felt like the shame no longer owned me. I felt like it didn't own me, that I was taking back my voice. I was taking back my life and what had happened and making art with it. And maybe I can't control who reads it. I can't control the you know uh if it's even going to be read, but it's like doing the work and letting go of the outcome.
I love that, putting it out there and like making art with all of that baggage of shame, like, and making it into this beautiful art form. I love that. um I'm like feeling very emotional as you're sharing. Thank you. Darcy, do you have anything that you want to ask Wendy before I start launching it again?
I do. Wendy, thank you so much for opening your heart up. And I feel like I'm being, I'm witnessing you in your heart space, but also like as if you're opening your journal and sharing it. And I imagine that this is some of the intimacy that gets to happen in one-on-one sessions with you and in groups. And it's very sacred. Thank you. The I relate with Michelle and having some tenderness coming up and what you shared about uh, the family patterns and inherited experiences uh, that were being challenged, maybe transformed through speaking, even through writing. You know, writing as a form of communication is something that really stood out to me. And what you shared about how you grew up and family, there are certain pieces of your experience that I really relate to, and I'm curious how the relationship with yourself has shifted through your writing practice. If you would open up about that a little bit, because I what you've started um, what you've described so far as healing, I think about how healing can happen from the outside in, but it also happens from the inside out. And just curious how your relationship with yourself, first and foremost, has evolved through having pen and paper out.
So I think, that writing memoir is like a very specific kind of genre.
Mhm.
And that because what I'm doing is I'm inviting a younger version of Wendy to the page, you know, but I'm also bringing future Wendy to the page, so that I have the insight, you know, and I think the insight for me, and this is just my opinion, is valuable when you've done the work. So that means, yes, I've had to do therapy. I did the 12 steps. I've done energy work, a lot of sessions on a table. And so I've done a lot of work. So I'm future self has evolved, but I have to tell the the story sometimes from the younger version. So it's not only resurrecting my family members, but I'm revisiting my younger self and the choices that she made when she was, not getting the help that she needed back then, you know. And so it's like, it's this kind of balancing act that you do in writing memoir that gives so much insight to me and depth when somebody does the work. I've read books where a person hasn't done the work and they have no emotional depth, no emotional thread. I lose interest. I go, oh, okay. They're still in the victim mode, but uh, I think, like I was talking about, how has this changed me? It's profoundly and deeply changed me in ways I didn't see coming. You
Mhm.
know, I didn't see, I didn't think I had all that shame within me when the book was coming out, but I was able to confront that. And in my writing, I also confront, you know, things like resistance, and how resistance manifests. Um, you know, it's fear and like, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of being exposed. I'm afraid of being judged. So since I walked through that fear of being judged, it no longer has the charge over me.
Mhm.
It no like yeah, this is who I'm an open book, you know. I'm an open book. I've told you my secrets. I've told you things I'm ashamed about, you know, but it's like, most of my life I lived as a chameleon before I got sober. And I pulled out personalities out of a Rolodex and became them in different situations. The freedom, the freedom from just telling your truth, it's, well, it taps into a place where I want to live, and that's authenticity. I want to be authentic, you know, so uh, that I can sit down and have a deep and meaningful conversation with other women who understand, and we don't need to talk about the weather or um, how are stocks doing or whatever. But it's like what matters, what matters. And I think and believe that there has been a repression of the divine and the feminine in society under the umbrella of the patriarch, and that it's important for women to find their voice and to use their innate power, whether it's maternal or divine or feminine, to heal the world.
I love well, you said so many juicy things. I think one of the things you've shared a couple of times is the changing family patterns, like multi-generational family systems. You have the ability to do that through your writing
Mhm.
and talking to those different parts of yourself, which really I see the work with writing coupled with like an IFS therapist, internal family systems, would be such a powerhouse move for someone to really go super deep, right? Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's it. I mean, a lot of people that have done IFS work and do my, writing prompts and go, this is very IFS, So yeah.
yeah, because when I took my first memoir writing class, I remember going back to therapy, not and thinking that I wasn't going to go back to class because I'm like, what is happening to me? And she's like, this is amazing. We're gonna do therapy now. Thank you, writing class, for shaking her up so that she actually can go deeper into the work, right? Because it's so easy to go superficial in a lot of ways in therapy, but there's this next level that I think can really accelerate people. And yeah, it does create a vulnerability. So, having someone like you individually support people, that maybe don't want to participate in a group can be really powerful. That container, that safe container you're going to hold for people. So I'm glad, and yeah, and being able to be authentic, because sometimes you just don't feel like you can in this like culture, right? This
Yeah.
culture where you have to kind of put on all these different hats, but through your writing, like you get to shine bright. It's a voice that you can have and share with the world in another forum versus just our bodies out there. Um, and then it becomes this like art form. I love that. And you've got how many art forms now, Wendy?
Well, you mean books
Books.
or
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
calling books art
book.
form.
Yeah, well, I wrote two about from my own memoir, and then I co-wrote Dream Out Loud with my son that told my youngest son and told his story, from his point of view. So talk about another level of healing that transpired through helping him write his book, So, coaxing him, and to tell me his story. And some of the stuff he told me I didn't even know. I go, what? And but talk about making amends in a profound and poignant way is writing a memoir for your son because he has an incredible story.
So you're saying that you and your son co-wrote, was he sharing things that you had like he was upset with you about in his childhood directly, or
No, things that he was sneaking, like, little things he'd got that I didn't know were happening at the time, like running from the security guard at Samoa, they chasing him. So just like that, but so I think that too, the healing in with the family is like I asked both my sons to read the parts about them in Motherlode. And I checked in with them because a lot of people that write memoir go, well, what about the families? I told my ex-husband that I was writing a book. I didn't ask for his permission, but I did ask my sons for their permission. And so they were very proud and very supportive of me. And, both showed up for my book openings. And, you know, I think that my oldest son that recently passed, you know, uh, years ago, years ago when he didn't know my story about my mother and her schizophrenia. So when he heard that I had been through a tumultuous childhood, he had more empathy for me. Again, this is where truth matters because my dad wasn't telling us anything about, like we were, it was a secret. So my kind of making amends, or it's not kind of, it's making amends, is being honest and transparent with my kids. Because the intergenerational trauma that was being passed down to me from, my parents and being passed down through my kids, it's like uh, somebody has to wake up in the family. I mean, they don't have to, but our people are called on to wake up. And it's like, uh, I felt like I was the one being called upon it. And just like that mother load was knocking on my door, it had to come out. I had to heal the generational pain and wake up, and it's like been one eyelash at a time sometimes. But I think that writing accelerates it,
Mm,
accelerates the process.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's just a different modality to get there. Do you have any do you want to share with our audience out there like what to expect in an individual session with you for someone who's contemplating this?
Well, I think for someone that is like wanting to write,
Mhm.
and then there's many, many people come, I want to write a book, or, I've got a story I need to tell. I think that the idea of writing a book can be too big. It's overwhelming. So a lot of people don't start. I would say I'm a good place to start. Because of the safety and the space that I hold. I believe that writing is sacred, so I hold that space in a sacred way. And so initially, maybe the first time we meet, it's getting to know them, getting to know a little bit about, you know, uh, their desire, dreams, and what they want to accomplish. And then I give them a little light prompt the first time. But then, it's just like as you get to know them, you're guided by where you want to go or where you hope to go together. So it's like an adventure. It's like an adventure. But I just hope to share with people the excitement and the healing that comes with writing. I had no idea. I had no idea.
I love it. I mean, I also think it could even be a starter to a transition to therapy or collaboration. I could see people who are like, I'm not doing therapy, and then they start writing their book, and then they find a way where they can collaborate, or this just becomes their therapeutic support. Um,
Well, some of the clients that I see take their writing to their therapist and they get very excited because, maybe they've exhausted what to say in a therapy session,
mhm.
but but their relationship, with the therapist is so good. They want to share what they've written. I want you to see this part of me that I haven't brought to therapy. Like, how cool is that? You know?
It's so cool. Darcy, any final words?
Yeah, well, what's coming to mind is thinking about the wound is where the light enters in. And think about this literally with like a notebook. We open up a page, right? There's a blank page, and that's an invitation for light to pour in. By writing what's true. And it can be really intimidating to have honest conversation, almost like looking in the mirror, like mirror work, which is something that was suggested to me years ago. I was like, I'm not really sure how that's going to go. But the idea of writing, I got that from my dad and my mom, uh, was a little bit more approachable. And I appreciate how you bring in this humanity to it, that it doesn't have to be pretty. It's not we're not performing. This is about sitting down uh, and opening up and seeing what wants to come. Um, and I'm definitely looking forward to tracking you down and seeing how to work with you, because the healing that's possible and the life beyond healing also is what I'm hearing, that this isn't about fixing or forcing. It's actually about excavating and creating new ways. So, just want to thank you so much for being a leader uh, in sovereignty and self-love, really. And I'm wondering if there were any words that you wanted to share to someone who's listening who might feel a bit intimidated by the idea of writing. Any suggestions on one place that they might start?
Um, I think that, I mean, in writing, there's, ultimately we do a lot of shadow work, later on, but a place to start, I think, is taking a vivid memory that is vibrant and just very alive for you. Like Karen did it in a class once. I forget the term she used, but like I remembered my dog and throwing the ball to my dog. And then from there, that scene of just throwing the ball to my dog, Nikki, his little brown and white curly tail, and I could see him jumping up and wraps clamping on the tennis ball and bringing it to me with a wet ball, so it's like to bring, I think if you're tempted to write, I would just keep it light and something that is very, might be being in nature, taking a hike or a walk, and just get into the details of it. you know it's like it's I think that when we have too big of a goal, that it's like it becomes overwhelming. If we just keep it small, baby steps, and a time that you felt joy, is a good place to start.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again. We will be providing our listeners information to your website and your books. I have, actually, I have all your books. They're sitting on my bookshelf. I'm looking at them right now.
Oh,
I appreciate you and all the wisdom you shared with us today. Thank you, Wendy.
thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Darcy. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.